Monaghan, ACO Alison Reid, and Lee Buncombe.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, so we are on declarations of interest. Do we have any? Other than ones already noted?
No.
No? Okay, then moving swiftly on to chairperson's announcements. I just like to note that this is Gabby's last meeting before she leaves us for her maternity leave. So I'm sure the committee and in fact the service wish her well over the next few months in what she has to go through. I've no idea, but you did it 3 times, so you know.
It can't be that bad.
But you know, it's seriously, thank you so much. You stepped into a significant post for us, and you know, you've done a great job. We're very, very grateful for everything that you've done, and wish you sincerely all the very best of the next few months.
Yeah, good luck, Gabby. Can't wait to meet the baby.
Yeah, I'll bring her in.
Okay, right, so it's minutes of the last meeting, so I'll go through and with matters arising per page. So we'll start on the first page, which is page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. And page 9. And I wasn't able to find a single spelling mistake this time for oral revision, so Diane proud. Well done. Okay, so there's nothing to add to that. So point 5 then is our update on outstanding actions. So revenue monitoring report, that's ongoing. Capital monitoring report is ongoing, and the treasury management strategy is ongoing, as one would expect. Any officers got anything to add on any of those points, please? Yes,
basically.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, in future reports, when we have got an action like that, but whether we could have indicative time frames, because I appreciate that some of it is like maybe a program of work, or one of it might be like a one-off, so organised refresher training and treasury management for commissioners. You know, that's like a one-off event, isn't it? So I'm just wondering in future whether it might be helpful rather to have ongoing, but to have a target for when that action should be completed, and then whether we then have got, you know, if it is ongoing and it's a piece of work, we can have an indication whether we think we've got confidence that it will be delivered on time, whether it's going to be out of time, or I'm just wondering whether that might be an improvement to the current system. But I can see Lisa's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, thank you for that, Kirsty. I was just going to say that absolutely chimes in with discussions we've had with Welsh Government this morning, and then further discussions you know, in our closed meeting. So Lisa, over to you.
I think we can box off minute item 6 because I've identified who the networks are for funding going forward. So the Society of Welsh Treasurers is the first one. Second one is the Chief Accountants Group. Our local authority roadshows boxes off our network and formal consultation process with chief execs, leaders and section 151s. So that is it really from my point of view.
But what about Kirsty's point about time stamping these things?
I think well, Lisa has given a very comprehensive report on, identify possible networks. So Lisa has clearly, done that, so that can come off. I guess the question for me, Lisa, would be, having identified the networks, what happens now, isn't it? Because you've clearly done that. So I guess it's understanding how you're going to use those networks to achieve the goal, because the goal here is early consultation, isn't it? So I guess that, to me now, that can come off because Lisa's clearly completed that, but it does lead to the question, how is identifying those groups going to lead to the action? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does, and I think that those discussion points they're ongoing every year. This is part of the financial management of our budget, so they start at the 1st of April and they carry on to the 31st of March. It's a continuous loop in these groups throughout the year, and it is just an ongoing dialogue of what the challenges we're all facing, what the funding settlement is. So it's about improving visibility, isn't it? And getting our face in the frame for consideration and some of this stuff. And we know last year's big issue was national insurance, and we covered that off in our road shows and subsequent correspondence in a big way.
Yes, no, that's great. But I think if I'm right in understanding what you're saying, Kirsty, is about getting kind of points, junctions, times within the year. So, what's going to happen in 2 months? What's going to happen in 4 months? So it's those kinds of milestones.
Yeah, I think milestones for the milestones rather than ongoing in the action log. Lisa, that's really, really helpful. I'm just wondering whether a report, because what we're trying to achieve here is early consultation, isn't it? I'm just wondering whether we could include a couple of lines, as you go through the year when you're reporting on the revenue outrun, and whether we're on target and stuff, whether in those reports we could just have a paragraph that outlines what activity is being undertaken to achieve that early consultation. So I think that's the point here, isn't it? It's like, how can we have early engagement? So I'm just wondering, when you do those reports on revenue performance, whether we could just have an extra paragraph in the narrative that says, this is what these are the discussions I'm having early doors with our partners. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, because that evidence is what it's just basically we want evidence for what you've been doing, because we know you do it, we know it's being done, but we don't know when it's being done.
Yeah, and I think what would be really helpful to us is when potentially some people might say, well, you could have engaged with us earlier, we'll be able to demonstrate that that's exactly what you've been doing.
Yeah, we've got customer practice to say, well, actually, you were engaged with on, the 14th of August, 27th of October, blah, blah, because leaders will throw out at us things and then we haven't got an evidence base. We can't say, well, we know you've done it, but we need that. It's about that, yeah?
Yeah, I think so it's difficult to give hard and fast dates because they alter, but it does tend to be seasonal, and I can definitely pick up the shape of that in early budget setting, scene setting report in September, if that's all right.
Yes, perfect.
That's spot on. Because then we've got to give evidence to these people who complain about the money they give us. Yeah.
So that can come off then. That's perfect.
Yeah. And what about 7 and 8, Kirsty? Do you want the same kind of things there?
So explore the options for lobbying Welsh Government in relation. Now we know that this is potentially Pandora's box, isn't it, Lisa? So I think with this one, we either need to decide whether we're going to do it and what the approach is, or perhaps we're going to review our decision and actually decide that actually on reflection, we don't need to do that because potentially that's a real challenge, isn't it?
I think so. I think this is worthy of an offline conversation initially.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we could say there is, rather than ongoing, we could say conversations to be had before the end of you know, May, June, whenever,
Yeah.
whatever's appropriate, and we don't need to decide that now. And then again, organise refresher training session for treasury management for commissioners. Again, if we're saying, right, the target for getting that done by is the end of June,
Yeah.
we can just put end of June, and then we can just collectively hold ourselves account then.
Yeah.
I just think it's clearer and it's more transparent about what we're doing. Ongoing could be anything.
Yeah.
Well, on point 8, we could get that boxed off by the next Finance and Audit committee. I've been speaking with my contact in Link, which is now MUFG, and we can tag on a formal training session to the end of Finance and Audit committee in July, I think it is, isn't it? The next one.
Perfect, let's do that then. Just say
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
completed by end of July. That's all we need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There's one more on the other side.
I was going to say, so for good practice going forward, if we can dispense with ongoing, but be more specific.
Yeah, just, yeah, and some, as I said, some of them might have quite a long outrun.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of like understanding whether
Yeah.
we're on track to deliver that,
Yeah.
isn't it? Or whether we're
Yeah.
going to be knocked off track. But
Yeah, could, you know, if it's December 2025, it's December 2025, but
Yeah.
it's the date, yeah. So 9 and 10 are completed. Yeah. And then we got 11. Performance, yes, so the strategic performance indicators.
So number 2, commissioners to liaise with Welsh Government. So we've done that, and we have received some verbal indication that they are very happy to do that, and we know now, don't we, that Christian Hadfield is potentially working with 2 other services to be able to outline what that indicator is. So Welsh Government have said yes, it's a good idea, and then the professionals are working on what it would actually look like. So I think that can come off. That's completed.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thanks for that. That was, I think that was, yeah. That was well overdue. So we just got the one report for decision, and that's the report of the interim monitoring officer for our terms of reference. So Gabby, yeah?
Yeah, over to me. So section 6 of our constitution sets out that we need to have a regulatory committee specifically looking at budget and policy frameworks, and that responsibility obviously lands with the Finance and Audit Committee. The purpose of the committee, as you'll see in Appendix 1, is overarchingly to commit to effective governance of public resources, and then also to monitor and performance related targets. So in terms of the committee, the general functions in relation to financial reporting, monitoring of the internal and external audits, so that we've got TIA and Audit Wales, and then also we've got the performance management at the end, 4.6. The committee itself will also do an annual report back to the Board of Commissioners, just highlighting sort of the main things that the committee have looked at over the last year. So the terms of reference has been updated, mainly just to reflect the Commissioner's involvement in the service nowadays. And the ask today is for you to note and approve the terms of reference, but to answer any questions.
This committee does a lot, doesn't it? Yeah, that's, you know, that's just my initial reaction to it. Kirsty.
Thanks, Gabby. I think this is absolutely great fun. I'm very happy to approve, but I wonder if Chair would indulge me perhaps in a conversation about 4.6.1.3 and the wording around that particular term of reference. So to quote, it says to promote a focus on performance targets and the validation of underpinning data. And I just wonder whether that is a very crude function of the committee. And I just wonder whether the wording could change there a bit, because to promote a focus on performance targets, it's about chasing the target, isn't it? And what we're trying to do here is do the right thing. And I just wondered whether that the word target kind of is inappropriate in this context.
Is it too blunt?
Well, yeah, and it's too narrow, isn't it? Because so I wondered whether we could look at to promote a focus on performance excellence rather than a target and continuous service improvement, because that's what we want, isn't it? We want to promote we're not chasing a target. We might use targets to let us know whether we got there, but actually overall we're interested in service excellence and continuous improvement. So I'm just wondering whether that might be a more holistic and a kind of a more nuanced way than just like saying, well, what we're interested is chasing targets, because we know that can be corrupting, can't it? A target.
I used to say to my pupils, a person with no targets has nothing to hit. So, you know, and that always.
But you might use targets to get there, but we do know, don't we, that targets can skew. And there is always, you know, the best targets in the world can have a downside or an upside, and the pursuit of them can sometimes mean. I always used to think about my educational context. We used to say to a school, a child getting a C was a success. Well, that's only a success if that child was destined to get an E. But if a child was destined to get an A and ends up with a C, then that wasn't a success. And actually, to say to a child that actually to get a D when they were going to get an F, actually that's a success. The school has been successful because they've.
I dragged many of them to a D.
So I'm just, for me, so
I laugh because that's what they used to tell me at school.
Exactly.
I got a lot of C's and didn't put in much effort.
Yeah, exactly. And we created a performance target that says to the school, that's all you need to do. So I'm just sorry.
That's no
bugbear. I'm just wondering whether we can get the word targets then and talk about performance excellence, but Lisa's got something to say.
I was, you know, just to say, when I had an A-level class of 6 pupils, I had 100% success rate. Then I had an A-level class of 38, and that was a bit more difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
Lisa.
As an offer, because Gab is going off and there'd be some continuity in Gabrielle's absence, I reviewed the performance management piece. I've got some wording that I could freshen up and make it a little bit more modern. I think this is potentially a legacy issue, and we can change that language there. You know, like the first point, we can reframe it as this committee will act on performance issues referred by the Board of Commissioners. You know, things like that. So it's just modernising the language, I think, and the intent.
I just think there's that one paragraph that's all which it jumped back to me. So I don't want to make it a massive work because the rest of it is absolutely great. It's fine, but I just wonder whether we could just slightly amend that.
Yeah. Do you want to, Commissioner? Would you like to put that as an action for me by the next Finance and Audit Committee then?
Could we, given that that's not until July, are we allowed to do that offline by chair's action?
Yeah, so what I was going to say, if that's sort of the only minor amendment you'd want to make, we could do is sort of approve on the basis that we make that amendment and we.
Let's do that.
Let's do the chair's action.
Let's do that.
The chair would then sign it off.
Yeah, so then we don't have
to. Lisa, for that offer.
Yeah, so we don't have to make a big cahoot about it. So other than that, wait, do we approve?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so approved. Reports for information and assurance. Report on end-of-life operational equipment. Dean.
Thank you, Lady Wilcox. So this report is in reference to the ongoing campaign in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And it's a report in around the proposed disposal of the end-of-life operational equipment, which we are donating or have donated to Fire Aid.
Yeah.
So Fire Aid are a partnership with UK Fire and Rescue Services, UK Government and the Home Office are involved in this as well. National Resilience, Search and Rescue, and the National Fire Chiefs Council and the Fire Industry Association. There was a service. I think part of our values has always been around the charitable attributes that we've got as individuals and as an organisation. So since the Ukraine war, it's a very sobering experience for everyone to see it unfold on the news. Some of the latest figures from there since that campaign has started is that there's 100 firefighters in Ukraine have been sadly killed and lost their lives. Further 431 have been injured. There are 4 which are currently in captivity. They've destroyed 411 fire stations and around 1,700 vehicles of the Ukrainian Fire and Rescue Services. So over the last 3 years, through that partnership and through the charitable element, South Wales Fire and Rescue Service have been donating fire appliances and associated fire equipment and volunteers from within the service to take part in nationalised convoys, taking the appliances and equipment to the Ukraine on behalf of those partnerships. This paper is for information in or around the latest convoy to the Ukraine, and that was convoy number 8, which has occurred in the last 3 years. At which point we have disposed of 6 fire appliances and a number of other assets, mainly hydraulic pump equipment and some firefighting equipment. That equipment has been replaced through our normal budgeting for 24 and 25, through our normal asset replacement programs, and it's not impacted upon the service delivery of South Wales Fire and Rescue Service, and it's definitely not impacted on our operational response during that period. The disposal of the vehicles comes under our disposal procedure, and it allows us to use donations of assets which can be made through approved charities or community groups in line with the service scheme of delegations. The appliances were delivered to the Ukraine by a number of volunteers from the service, along with a partnership of other services early in April. And the cost of that full deployment was covered by the charity Fire Aid. So it came at no cost of the service as well. There was around 18 volunteers from the service. The one thing that we've never encountered since over the 3 years of the 8 convoys is a shortage of people in the service willing to take part in the convoys, deliver that, what we see as essential equipment to some blue light colleagues across the water, because the boundaries of our humanitarian efforts stretch much further than just the boundaries of South Wales and the borders of the UK as well, and that's international. So this was for information for the commissioners in and around the donation of those vehicles and the contribution that we are making to the wider efforts of the UK Fire and Rescue Services across the UK.
It makes for very sober reading when you see, what's happening to the service in Ukraine and the way in which we have as a community, both here in South Wales and across the UK, the fire community has responded to this, which is marvellous. I would like us to, we haven't done it on a previous occasion, but we're here now, so I'd like us to write to the 18 volunteers from the commissioners, thanking them for their service. We'll put something together. I'm sure we can compose a letter that if the chief wants to send something, I'm sure he will as well. But I think it's important that commissioners, draw a line in the sand here and say, very well done, thank you very much, and great job, really. I'm glad that obviously the charity is supporting the costs for us, but sometimes things are more important than the cost, and there we are. Anyway, Kirsty.
Yeah, can I just, I certainly second formally acknowledging the staff that have given up their time to accompany the convoy, and I'm very pleased that we take part in this initiative. I just on the process though, I just wanted to just ask some questions really, because I do note the disposal of other assets, talks about public auctions. Now, obviously, a decision, quite understandably, and one I would agree with, has been made not to do that on this occasion, and that those resources are sent. And as I said, I absolutely agree with that. But I just want some assurance, really, that there is a process and there is some oversight and there is a clear decision-making policy and tool that is used to record that decision, and a rationale, really, as to why that decision has been reached. Because some people might take a different view. I'm very happy to defend it.
Yeah.
But other people might take a different view. So I'm just looking for some assurance that there is a process that lies behind this that would, demonstrate that proper procedures are being followed.
So very important point, thanks.
Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, so Kirsty, thank you for picking that point up. I was just going to outline some of those process things. I think in future reporting, the paper needs to come as a decision-making paper. So for commissioners and fire authority, whoever sitting on the fire authority, to have full access to all the information to be able to make that decision. I think it's right and proper that we are supporting that effort. It is the right thing to do. I think we all agree with that. But no doubt there is a decision to be made here. So rather than for information, the paper needs to come for decision. And in order to make that decision, you need full transparency. So with the list of items that we've got there, you'd be expecting costs, wouldn't you? Because there is a cost of foregoing income to support this effort, and it's just to be aware and transparent of what the value of that is.
Yes. Sorry, I was just going to say, because I can share with you that in the leaders meeting that we had recently with the commissioners, the leader of Caerphilly Council, when we informed him of this, asked us about, would we be supporting Gaza in the same way? So I said, well, we'll look at that and we'll get back to you. So I raised that just as an example that, people are interested in what we're doing, but sometimes, it raises more questions than answers. So we have to ensure that we do have that detail behind, because I don't think we are. I can't see a land convoy going across to Gaza in the same way that it can go across to the other end of Europe. But I may be wrong, but so be aware people are interested and they want answers.
I would disagree with Lisa, and I think we can take that pick. We can pick those points up, can't we? Should we need to make that decision again?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay. Anything further? No? All right, good. Thanks very much. So that, again, a good discussion and some good points going forward. Right, so point 8, performance report, strategic performance indicators. I think it's you again, isn't it, Dean?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a report for commissioners for the committee in and around our strategic performance indicators. Obviously, we've Q4 of the last financial year is now complete. So we're in a position to just share with you and give you the awareness in terms of how we actually performed. And what it will do is give us a reflection of the previous financial year for quarters 1 and 4, and then measure us against what the projected outcomes were. And I think just going back to Kirsty's earlier point around targets, because 12 months ago, these were classed as targets. When we gave a projection of the following year, we classed them as a target. We removed that term and the narrative around 12 months ago, just to call them as projections rather than targets. So it's a fair point we were making earlier on. Out of the 7 strategic performance indicators, just for refreshment, the first 4 are attendances of various types of incidents. So will give us total fires attended, total false alarms attended, total of number of road traffic collisions that we've attended, and also total other special service calls. So I'll go through these in detail. The next 2 are the number of deaths and injuries caused by all fires and accidental fires. And the last one being was classed as an operational effectiveness collection, which is the percentage of dwelling fires which were confined within the room that they originated. And that ties closely in with the Welsh Government thematic review around operational effectiveness. From the appendix, which is attached, so page 6 of appendix, the first page there gives us a table with some data in there, and I'll briefly explain the data. The left-hand column identifies which strategic indicator it belongs to. The third column then gives us Q1 to 4 of the previous year. And then the one in bold is Q1 to 4 of the previous financial year, 24-25, which we reported on. That gives the bold and the validated numbers for the end of the year. The third column along gives us the projection. So this was a projection that we set in March of last year. And when we set the projections, they are a accumulation of the previous 5 years for each of those strategic indicators. So the total numbers that we've attended for each one over a 5-year period, our statistics team work out the average, and then that gives us the projection for the following year. So that gives us an idea of how we've performed against the projection that we set in March of last year. And you can see that from the 7, we've got 3 which are green, which means that we've excelled, or we are up to 5% within that projection. And then you can see that there are 2 which are red. That means that our performance has exceeded 5% of what that projection was likely to have been. So if I turn over to page 7, look at the first performance indicator. These are the total fires attended. And you'll see that this has come down 4% from the previous year, and it's 8% lower than the projection that we'd set last March, which is really pleasing because it shows, I guess, some of the work that we're doing from a community safety aspect, the station business plans, all the partnership work that we undertake as well with various partners across South Wales. And then pleasingly, what we see is accidental fires have come down by 9%, deliberate fires are down by 2%, our refuse fires, which have historically been an issue for the service, are starting to come down as well, and that's attributed to lots of the partnership work that's going on. Deliberate grass fires came down by 27%, even though we saw and experienced a rising Q4 due to warm weather and more recent weeks. Our deliberate vehicle fires has increased by 5%, and that's when we looked into the trends of why those vehicle fires have gone up. Is in around 2 particular areas, hotspots within South Wales. So what that allows us to do from that continuous improvement perspective is then target those 2 specific areas. So station business
cars being
plans.
set on fire
It is
or
linked to
cars
stocks, yeah.
going on fire? Do you know what I mean? So
No, deliberate. Yeah.
Okay.
People, mainly from our experience, where they've been stolen vehicles, etc.
Okay.
And
It's
they've
up to
targeted
vehicles
specific. Yeah.
and they set on fire.
So we've
I
seen
sound like a criminal, don't I? But I'm not, honestly. I don't know these things. I just watch a lot of TV.
So we've seen a spate in areas that we've not seen before. So Caerphilly area in particular, and Treviga.
Okay.
Yeah. But then what we've done as part of this, it allows us to drill right down into the detail and then put some partnership elements in place. We talked to the local policing teams and
That's
those
interesting, the
areas.
difference, because, you know, if you'd said to me, I would have said Cardiff, Newport, you know.
The trends move around because I think last year it was the Cardiff area, maybe the Splot area, but then through some partnership working, community-based activity awareness, that problem's gone from that area, and then we experience it in other areas across the service. And now lithium-ion battery fires, which has also increased, you know, from a national perspective, lots of media
Is that
campaigns.
Is that cars?
It's charging, it can be vehicles, but it tends to be your charging of batteries within the property.
Ah, right, yeah.
But they've come down to 15%. And I think that's probably due to the media campaigns we've been running locally, but also from a national perspective as well. Okay, next strategic indicator is total false alarms attended. Total false alarms have come down by 2% based on the previous year. But what you'll note there is it's above the projected outcomes that we set in March of last year, 5% above. This ties highly into the changes that we've made through yourselves
Yeah.
earlier in the year with the
Yeah.
AFA attendance policy. That commenced in January.
Yeah.
So we've set the projected outcome for the end of the year. But in previous meetings, I give you some assurance, and the intention is to come back to you mid-term this year
Yes.
with a new projected outcome, because I think we need to take into account and allow what we start seeing and experiencing from the AFA policy change.
Yeah.
Because I think that number that we've set will need to drop and come down in 6 months' time.
So would that be the July meeting or the autumn meeting?
Autumn, I
Autumn?
would suggest they will pass, yes.
Okay.
But you'll see from some of the data there that false alarm good intents have come down. Malicious calls have also come down. Our educational premises have come down. And again, this might be tied in with the increased engagement that we've had with various outlets, different partners in and around our AFA policy changes, and they are addressing some of the things that they might need to put in place as well. Purpose-built flats has increased by 60%. There's work ongoing there within our community safety teams and business fire safety. Hospitals and medical care has come down, which is really pleasing because they tend to be the real hot areas for us, and our residential homes as well as coming down.
It's just a view from me, but so the stuff in the public sector seems to be working well, but the private area, so purpose-built flats are, largely built by, private firms. So you see, we don't have the same engagement, do we? So we've had lots of engagement with local authorities and about, the changes with the AFA and with the health partners, but it's more difficult to get hold of, private companies and individuals, isn't it?
It is, Lady Wilcox. It is a good observation. What we tend to do, if it's a private block of flats with a communal area, if the alarms go off the communal area, that allows our business fire safety teams to engage with the building owners. It becomes more difficult when they're private flats.
Yeah,
that's a difficult.
Yeah, it's just this is where data's so good. It just it just flung out at me there. Yeah.
Next one down is just total road traffic collisions attended. You'll see that over the previous years gone up by 6%, and that's risen 8% above the projection that we set. Extrication release of persons gone up by 2%, but pleasingly, the fatalities is significantly reduced by 48%, which is a clear win. Injuries are down by 13%. We've attributed that when I give you previous data, the 30 to 20 data has brought this down for us on some of those roads. RTCs involving cars gone up by 9%, but then you'll see that from motorcycles, etc., they've significantly reduced as well. The proportion of RTCs involving extrications or medical assistance has gone down by 4% as well. So an emphasis on some of the positives that's resulted, even though we've attended more, they've tended to be lesser impact collisions. So we're undertaking less activity when we arrive, which again just supports, I guess, 30 to 20 they'll get.
Yeah, I noticed somewhere as well that we've got some issues with buying old vehicles for people to train on, haven't we? Lisa, I don't know if you could just remind me what that was about. Supplier, was it? Yeah.
It's a quid in the jar. It's a supplier issue. So it's a limited supplier market. The contract has come to an end, and the same supplier hasn't come forward. So we're looking at various ways to go back out, because we do need a fair number of cars to practice on throughout the year. But in my 17 years in the service, this has always been an issue at one point or another,
Interesting. Yeah. Any reason why, Lisa? I mean, I'm just.
I think it's going to be a variety of reasons. Like, to cannibalise a vehicle, you could probably, it's worth more separately than it is together, in terms of those parts. Cost of steel and things like that. So I guess that's it. I think the current contractor was having difficulty getting from his main location into lots of the valley areas with his delivery vehicle, which was really large.
Oh,
So we are looking at so some of our stations are in highly residential areas, and
like what I
getting
did with you. Where was that one now, in the Bridgend Valley? You know,
there's a few locations like that actually,
Yeah.
to get through a street. So to get
Yeah.
through a street in a fire appliance is difficult, but this
Yes.
vehicle that carries lots of cars is bigger again apparently. So we are working with the suppliers to see if we can look at some kind of hub and spoke type arrangement where we get the cars delivered to a particular place in our service, and crews can come in to access those
Yeah.
cars away from the station maybe.
Good idea. Thanks for that. Sorry for taking you off task, but I was interested in the problem,
Fine.
because
Fine.
if we are continue, and we will continue sadly to have road traffic, you need to be up to date with your traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank
Yeah.
you. So the next one down is the total other special service calls. You can see that this has gone up by 1% on the previous year, but it's 6% below the prediction or projected outcome that we'd set in last year. Flooding incidents have gone up by 36%, and that was heavily due to the earlier storms at the start of this year.
Yeah.
But pleasingly, even though the flooding incidents increased through that period, water rescues came down by 2%. Again, which is, I guess, due in part to the awareness of the public out there. Assisting other agencies, medical incidents, etc., which have originated from the ambulance, the police or Coast Guard, has gone up by 4%. And again, historically, they have been issues for us as a service. Some of this is probably relating to changes we've made in our fire control, where we now embed what's called the duty group manager. So this is an individual who works 24 hours for us and is the liaison for fire control for any queries that they have. We've embedded that duty group manager now into control on a 9 to 5 basis on a Monday to Friday. So that individuals at source, they're able to give control some decision making much quicker than they would over the telephone, and then also give that pushback to some of the other blue light agencies that might be calling on us. So there's far more queries going on in terms of, do you actually need our resources there?
So something you've deliberately targeted and brought in has made a significant effect.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well done. Great.
Our bariatrics have come down as well, which is really pleasing. We are probably
Yes, because this was rising, wasn't it, in previous reports?
every year. It's
Yeah.
literally, we've seen a significant increase on this year on year. And again, I will attribute that to that duty group manager being in control.
Yeah.
Some additional training that we've given duty group managers about challenging these types of incidents that's coming to us.
Yeah.
We've got a can-do organisation, and we will attend anything and everything that people will ask us to do, but there are limits to the things that we can achieve.
Yes.
So those calls have come down as well, which is really pleasing. And then we've just seen a slight increase on our other rescue and release of persons, which have gone up on a natural scale.
Is that like people getting, I don't know.
It covers a vast array. It's normally lifts, incidents, that type of things. Yeah.
Greatest fear. Oh, anyway, there we are. And hazardous materials.
Yeah, that's come down as well by 8%, which is really good as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, the next one down, which is total fire fatalities and injuries. This has gone up by 20% based on the previous year, but it's below the projection that we set, because obviously over the last 5 years, it's been up and down, and we've experienced that for a few years. So there were 6 fire fatalities compared to 4 of last year. 5, sadly, over the age of 65, 5 were male. And there's various causes there, heating equipment, wiring and smoking. And what commissioners will be aware of is some of the fundamental changes that we're making from a community safety aspect, but also with a varied engagement we're doing across partnerships, public service boards, how we're making people far more aware, local authorities, touching base with as many individuals as we can to try and target and reduce the impacts of accidental fires in the home.
We
where we
were,
can.
we were drilling down with some of these figures. We were welcoming them this morning, weren't we? About, you know, about wider engagement and, you know, we understand the GDPR or whatever, but we need, you know, we don't know what we don't know.
Mm.
And in order to try and prevent, you know, we need to be as dialed in as possible with what other agencies and other services know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, legal costs. I think there's an inordinate amount of work going on downstairs at the minute in community safety,
Okay.
just to breach some of those gaps that we've identified, sadly, from some of these cases.
Yes.
Um,
And they would be known, wouldn't they? Some of
They
these
would,
people, they
yes,
would
some
be
of them are.
on the, you know, whatever risk register, the social services or whatever hold or health board.
Yes. Next one is the total accidental fire fatalities and injuries, and again, this relates a lot to what we've just discussed there. Gone up by 31%. And that's 2% above the projection as well. So a lot of this work is tied into our station business plans, and we drill down into the detail, and then we look at what activities and media campaigns, etc., we can put in place to try and address some of these issues. The last strategic indicator is the dwelling fires contained to the room of origin, and this is a real celebration, I would suggest, because since the history of this service collecting incident information, we have never ever achieved 85% or more of this target or projection. And for the first year, we've hit 85.7%. Which is really, really pleasing. And again, I think that's down to the work that's been undertaken from a training element within service, from a public awareness and the media campaigns that we've put in place. Our crew's gone out there dealing with home fire safety checks and trying to push the message of keeping people as safe as possible. But it also ties in with the increased awareness and training that we're doing as part of the recommendations from Welsh Government Thematic Region on operational effectiveness as well. So it was a really pleasing one for us to celebrate. And that concludes the indicators. So I'm happy to take any queries or questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, as with all this, Dean, it's about drilling down into the figures and learning from what these figures show us, using them as an evidence base in order to improve. That's what it's about. So, you know, it's a mixed bag. There's a lot of positives here. There are still areas of concern and areas for development and improvement. And as long as we can be assured that that is happening, then, you know, we take these figures in the context in which they're presented to us. Anything?
Yeah, sorry. So, Jean, I'm really grateful because the one question that I've written here on reading the papers was the so what test. So we've got all of this, and we can look at the trends. But then the question that arises next to me is, so what? What do we do with this now that we've got it? And you've very well, you know, demonstrated how this data then is used to inform action within the service. So I'm very grateful to receive that. And it's no mean feat, is it, to hit some of these targets which have never been done before. And I think, you know, everybody that's worked, you know, on the AFA policy, on the fire room of origin, you know, operational effectiveness stuff, they deserve a huge amount of credit and recognition for what they've achieved. I wonder if I could ask though, so on the bariatrics, obviously, you know, we're charged, aren't we, with the proper use of the resource that we've got, and bariatrics isn't our statutory responsibility. And clearly the person at control supporting some decision making is having an impact. But I just wonder, you know, about whether we are providing mutual aid and mutual support to our fellow public servants, you know, at times of need. And I know, for instance, you know, that you were involved in decision making when the ambulance service had to declare a state of emergency. Then actually, you know, you were then working with the ambulance service to do what you can. And I think it's just having some reassurance that that flexibility is there. So it is about prudent use of our resource, but it's also, you know, we are part of a public service to the whole of Wales, and if not us, you know, in last resort, then who? So just looking for some assurance that there is some flexibility within that system to provide mutual support, mutual aid to services as part of that One Wales ethos, really. And then I guess the second issue for me is obviously the data that is reported here for performance is the data that we're required to submit to Welsh Government. But that is limited, isn't it? Wayne, he suddenly perked up on the screen. Wayne tells me that this organisation is awash with data about what is going on in the service. And I just do wonder whether there is scope for this committee to work with the service alongside the CRMP process to kind of like develop a integrated performance report that goes beyond what we are required to report. Shouldn't be too onerous to do, in the sense of the data is held somewhere within the organisation, but that data being regularly reported up to senior leadership team, executive leadership team, so that they can hold service to account and then reported into either this committee or the Board of Commissioners to provide assurance in two spaces, really. One, and whether that's whether we're here or whether the fire authority comes back. When there's assurance that we have got a comprehensive integrated performance reporting mechanism within the service, which seems to me fundamental to have. And then secondly, allows us to have the kind of conversation we've had here today. What we're doing well, what are we not doing well? What are the plans that we need to put in place to drive improvement? So I'm just wondering, you know, I'm grateful to Wayne who gave me some insight and showed me on his computer the fact that there is vast amounts of data out there, but whether there is a more comprehensive way that we can use that data to support continuous improvement and to be able to be transparent with the public that we're serving, but also to hold all ourselves accountable for performance. Because this is quite limited, but understandably, it's doing what Welsh Government has asked.
And so that piece of work is in chain.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that performance management framework piece, which is in the governance strategy piece of work. So it links to the CRMP piece. It's probably an all ELT piece of work. So obviously Brian and Dean in their respective portfolios are looking at data streams for the relevant strategies, and of course we'll be developing prevention response strategies. The data will feed into those, and Wayne's team will be leading on the development of how that looks in terms of performance dashboards and KPIs. So it's quite a big comprehensive piece of work, but it's definitely something that's in chain to do in line with those other pieces, I think.
Yeah.
Obviously on it would come through.
Absolutely.
And I think that would be really, really welcome, as I said, on 2 points. One, to have assurance that there is a system in place, a really good system that is in place to provide that. And then also then there's the issue of what does that data tell us? But it just seems such a waste. If that data is all being collected somewhere, that data is not being used at a strategic level and a senior level to drive performance and to provide assurance. But Wayne, sorry, I called your name in vain there, but I don't know about, you know, from your side about what are the timescales that we can expect to see some of this coming through, so that we have that comprehensive set of data. And I would look at that in terms of like operational stuff, but also sickness levels, you know, performance management, you know, PADR type stuff within HR. It would be a really comprehensive set of indicators. Sorry, Wayne.
No, perfectly fine. I think I'm relatively reassured in house that I know it's like you said there, the data available. I know a lot of that data is being used in a lot of locally driven meetings. So I know Dean, for example, leads a service delivery meeting where there's a lot of rich data, making decisions and working out whose priorities there are. I know we have workforce planning meetings, health and safety meetings. We have all the meetings in house, I think, that are using these decisions at a management and tactical level. Which reassures me, because actually I think it'd be more difficult if you didn't have any of the information and you were starting afresh. But I think for me, it's just more a case of, especially now that we've got the, obviously HMIC report is upcoming, you've got everyone is looking at some strategies. For me, it's more a case now of working out what exactly those KPIs are that matter at strategic and board level and putting them together, because I think we have the data available. I think it's just working out, particularly where we are going forward, is what exactly do we all want to know? What do we want to look at, and what matters to us at the strategic level? Because, like you said, at tactical level, these conversations are they're ongoing, and they have been for a number of years. I know, like I said, Dean's meetings, I used to sit in on them, and they drive Dean's directors' priorities, and they're all very data driven. For me, it's just the absence at this level, like you said, going beyond what those Welsh Government indicators are. So for me, I think it's just about getting that conversation off the ground, myself and Dominic, getting into the SLT and getting a starter for 10, 15, 20, even 30 indicators that are of interest to this group, and we can fine tune them. But to me, it's a comprehensive piece of work, but certainly in the shorter term, we can have some conversations about what matters, what do we want to know, what do we want to discuss.
Brilliant. I think that summarises it much better than I did, Wayne. Thank you.
I'm going to come back to your first point,
Yes.
Kirsty. Yes, so you asked around a bit of assurance around flexibility and what we attend and what we don't attend. So anything from a statutory perspective,
Of course we
we
do.
will always respond. Obviously, there's historically over the years we've grown, I guess, in terms of our partnership working, how we go out individuals. So when we get calls from the police or the ambulance service in particular, anything of a life risk nature or critical nature, our control will automatically respond and mobilise appliances and officers for those types of incidents. Whereas some of them might be a little bit grey, they will use what I said earlier on, the duty group manager. They will be the individual they will contact in the first instance and say, we've had this call, what would you like us to do? And then they make the decision on behalf of control. Giving that duty group manager the right information to be able to make an informed decision that's consistent amongst 20, because there's 20 of them across the service. It has been a growing, probably, knowledge base over the last sort of 2 years. I think we're there, and I think we got really good at it. The incidents that we tend not to go to or they'll push back on may well be where it's not of a life critical issue. It's not a critical incident. It's basically where we might be asked to go and assist in just moving somebody because there's only 2 people in attendance, for instance. And they take it on a case-by-case basis. If there's anything of a technical nature, we will always attend, just to give that technical aspect, that the medics deal with what they need to, and we'll deal with the skill sets and experience that we've got and use our resources appropriately. That's what it needs to say. So I think we've got better at it. Could we develop and keep growing it? Yes, absolutely. So we're learning all the time from the data just to make sure that we are providing that best response, not just to communities, but to the partners as well, that we're being fair as well responses.
Brilliant. That's really great. Thank you so much.
Yes, there we are. We are assured. In that case, I'll close that item and just move on very quickly to number 9, register gifts and hospitality. It's the same register as we had previously. It's a Tesco voucher and 4 bottles of wine, I believe. Yeah?
Yeah.
So in order to record it and note it, we haven't had any, and those are last year. It was July last year and December last year. So we haven't had anything in this year, but we note the register from July and December. And thank the public very much for that, but we can't accept gifts, so we declined. But we understand when people want to say thank you, because people are very grateful for the service they receive.
Sorry, I don't want to delay, but given the fact that sometimes the public do want to recognise, and obviously, we're in policy where we don't accept those gifts. I just wonder whether we could signpost public who want to recognise the contribution to maybe the firefighters charity. So we can't accept those gifts, but if somebody did feel that they wanted to acknowledge the service, I just wonder, you know, whilst politely turning things down, maybe we could signpost them either to the firefighters charity or indeed fire aid that we've just been talking about that is supporting fire and rescue services, you know, internationally. But
I think it's a really good idea. I don't know, have we got any restrictions, Gabrielle, on doing that?
maybe that goes the rules.
I'd probably err on the side of caution of,
Yeah.
of naming specific charities,
Yes.
but we could be more general and say we can't accept this gift. However, you may wish to consider
A donation to charity.
Charity.
Yeah.
Do in other places, but
Yeah.
We tend to find, I think, just from experience, you know, I'll go back to a real sad fatalities we had in Abilene earlier this year with two individuals. And that family there, following the funeral, made a significant donation to the firefighters charity, just as a thank you to us. You know, it is a time of probably their worst time of their lives. They were thinking about the crews that attended, and so the public do.
Do that. Brilliant. That's great.
Yeah, good. Okay, so the report is noted and the suggestion of donation to charity is noted. Okay, so Audit Wales. So Charles, I believe, you're there with our officer Wayne Thomas to produce our annual audit summary for South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority 2024. I will say that we're very pleased, Charles, with the reading of this report and the fact that we submitted things a month early, which is always good. If you can not just meet the deadline, but you know, exceed it. And nothing of significance in my reading of it, but I'm sure you'll let us know if I've missed any of that. So diolch yn fawr iawn am dod, and please over to you, Charles.
Thank you, Chair. So the annual audit summary just summarises the work that we completed in 2024. So none of the information contained in it is new for commissioners. It is simply a summary just to round off the previous calendar year. The first section outlines the ISO 260 findings with regards to the financial audit, which, as noted, has comments on there around deadlines, around the quality of the draft statements being of high quality, and ultimately the Auditor General certifying the accounts with an unqualified true and fair opinion. The final section outlines the continuous improvement duty, which the Auditor General has and is certified, and provided a letter to that regard last year as well. And then there's some summary of the national reports and products that were produced last year, particularly with relevance to the Fire Authority in the governance report. That's the second one down in the table. Just a note on the planned work for 24-25, the setting of wellbeing objectives as required by the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is now completed, and I'm happy to say officers received the final version of that report earlier this week. So I look forward to coming back to the committee to talk the commissioners through that one. And the targeted high risk prevention work is well underway and is currently in our internal evidence challenge process. So a draft report should be with officers, you know, in a short while. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Charles. I'm going to bring Wayne in now to see if there's anything further from our officer perspective to add to this. Wayne, please.
No, nothing further from me. Like I said, I was working very closely with Audit Wales and Charles in particular. So again, no, like I said, just want to thank Charles really for coming to that meeting. I think a lot of what has been said, like you said, later across, has been quite pleasing so far, and it's nice to have that ongoing relationship with Audit Wales.
Good. Any comments?
I just want to say thank you to the officers that have worked so hard to get this report and this confirmation from Audit Wales. It's no mean feat. So thank you to the officers that have done their work exceptionally well. And it's lovely to see that recognised by Audit Wales.
Yes.
Thank you very much to everybody involved.
Yes.
Wayne, Lisa, and many other people I'm sure that have been
Yeah.
involved in that process.
I can only add to that. And of course, Charles, as a former leader of a local authority and regular meetings with Audit Wales in that context, I was very pleased to receive the positivity in this, because that hasn't always been the case in the past when you're trying to run a local authority. It's quite difficult to get so many ticks from Audit Wales in one document. But diolch yn fawr, thank you very much. So I note that report if there are no further comments on it. And thank you very much for taking your time out to attend the meeting. You're very welcome to stay, but you know, if you need to go now, Charles, thank you very much. Yeah, well. Okay, so noted. And point 11, full work programme for Finance and Audit Committee.
The only thing really to flag from my perspective, the next meeting obviously being the July meeting, there's quite a lot of reports coming to this committee in that meeting. So what we have done is penciled in sort of a 2-part meeting. So there's plenty of time for discussion if required.
Oh yes, yes, there are. Yes, 2 pages of it. Yeah.
One of the conflict with the training sessions on that Lisa mentioned earlier.
Okay, so we need to do some diary management, but there'll be 2 parts to the meeting to cover that off for you.
Okay.
Yes. Forgive me, I'm not going to be allowed to come again, am I? So can I just ask Lisa, there's probably a very good explanation for this, but I know that in September we'll have a revenue monitoring report. Would we not expect to have one of those at each meeting so that we are having, so I'm sure you would never allow it to happen, but early sight of us going off budget, the earlier that we know about that step, the better, because that allows you to take mitigating actions, isn't it? It's much more difficult to take mitigating actions halfway through the financial year or 3/4 of the way through the financial year. So I'm just wondering, not to add to the already long list of things of the 18th of July, I'm just wondering, is there a reason why we wouldn't have a revenue monitoring report at each meeting? It's probably a very good reason.
Lisa.
Yeah, that is a really good question. So it's a small finance team, and what they are concerned with in the first quarter of the new financial year is getting the statutory statement of accounts produced. So that's a really big project. So we look at getting the draft version of that out by the 31st of May, and then we get audited, which is a job in itself. And with final sign off the 31st of July. Now, given the timelines of the Finance and Audit Committee, we would know in August what our budget position is and what the major changes are since budget setting. But of course, you won't see that until September, because there's like a 6 to 8 week timeline between us producing the information and it coming through to committee. So in answer to one of your questions, it's impossible to get it for every meeting. I'd like to, but they're just not big enough. That would be an additional resource in the team. And the second bit is we do know earlier, and that informs my budget setting sort of report in September as well. It's just you won't get it until September. Does that help at all?
Yeah, no, I understand. As I said, I think, the only thing that, I'm concerned about is, if we were way off, if we were running much beyond what we thought we were, the earlier that is identified, the longer that you've got to take the mitigating actions to get everything back in on track.
But we do revenue outturn in July.
We do, and that's where lots of learning come into play, because in getting the statement of accounts done, you have to box off last year. So it's like a lessons learned piece, that statement of accounts piece. It's not just about the statutory document, it's about what did we learn from last year. So the last monitoring reports I would have brought to committee would have been in March, wouldn't it? And I would have said, look, this is what we think the forecast is for revenue, this is what the forecast is for capital. And in July, what I'll be saying to you is, this is what we thought, this is what happened, this is what we've learnt. So you and generally those things are indicative of things that are going to inform our budget setting going forward. So they are useful questions to ask.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
But I just reiterate what you said again, you know, the earlier we know any problems, it's about heading it off at the pass. And I don't think we can emphasize that enough, you know, we need to know if things are going astray. But you'd let us know anyway, Lisa, wouldn't you?
Of course I would.
Exactly. You'd be banging the door down, saying, you better stop spending. Okay. Sorry, anything else, Gabby, on
No, that
any of the that's it, is it?
Sorry. Can I just ask? Sorry.
I'm not.
Go on.
I'm not coming again. Can I just ask then? So, the CRMP work, that goes to which committee? Is that going to strategic?
Yeah, strategic planning.
Okay, that's clear then. It doesn't need to appear here because it's going to appear in that committee. And like you said, there's quite enough for this committee which we're doing, so we don't need to add any more. So as long as I know where that is.
Where you're at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good.
That's okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, it's, yeah, no, we've added lots of value. It's great. Seriously, I do value your contribution. You need more than one of us.
Yeah,
doing this.
it's
There's so much
yeah.
here. Okay, so I've got no items of business that I deem urgent. And items to report back to the Board of Commissioners Committee.
No, I don't think we need to escalate, do we? No, not need to escalate.
No, in that case, I declare the meeting closed. Yeah, very much. Gabby, well done, your best, lovely girl.
Very much.
Yes, no pen, but I tell you what, I'll buy you a pen when you come back. How about
To ensure my return.